How's it going, guys? I'm back up on the roof of the motorhome, and just thought I'll show you as far as I got last night before it rained. I was able to get some of the sealant. I'm going to work it around a little bit more in here, and then I had to cut these down by about 3/4 of an inch, and then I just plop those on for the night. So if any rain did get in, it was just minor amounts. So here's the other one. Same thing. A bit of plastic from cutting it. I cut this one after I put this sealant around it. So let's get to work. I don't know, not really any way I can set you up here where you can watch. I forgot to bring the tripod, so I guess you'll just have to sit like that. See what kind of a view that gives you. So I'm going to work the stuff in best I can. And you don't need a ton of it. You're not trying to reinforce anything. You're just creating a water barrier, and the water barrier is going to allow the water to run off a little bit. Now, one of the other things is, because these holes don't line up, I'm going to make sure I get putty in those holes. So as you can see here, I'm just going to take a little bit of the putty and I don't just put it on the way it is. I knead it, get it working, kind of like silly putty or plasticine or something like that. I never just put it on in the strips like it is. I work it, and warmth of my hands also softens it up good. And then to do these, you see I rolled it into a kind of a point, and then what I'll do is I'll just work it down into the hole. I will also put more on there. But once again, I'm just working it into a point and then into the hole. Try to get as much in as I can. It's likely overkill, but you know what? I have my standards, and I've had to cut them back in some places, but this is a place I don't have to. Plus, I don't ever plan on doing this again, so whatever happens with this, it's got to last the rest of the life of the motorhome as long as we own it. Even if it was a motorhome I was selling right away, I would still do it this way, because it's just got to be done well. I'm just working it into the hole as much as possible. Oh, the sun's coming out. It's a nice day today. It's 21 degrees. It's absolutely perfect for me. And a good breeze, so there's no mosquitoes. There's no humidex. So as long as I conserve my energy, I could likely get a lot done today. And if you guys were watching the video on me working on the 12-volt electrical system, wasn't thinking clearly, and after 3 meters I thought I better double check things, and it turns out my my battery charger isn't working good for a deep cycle battery. I actually dug out the instructions for it, and it actually did say it wasn't recommended for deep cycle batteries. So I think that battery might still be dead anyway, because I think it ran too low, and normally with deep cycle batteries you don't want them to run down in voltage. You want them to stay at 12 volts or so. Okay, now I'm going to make sure I get a decent blob on top of each of these screw holes. So I'm making a little ball about pea-sized, just making sure it's on top. Now, I'm going to get enough to put around the entire vent. So that's probably about 8 or 9 inches. Pulled off about a foot there. As you can see. As I mentioned, I don't like to just put it on the way it is. I like to work it. This is very much like stuff that my dad used to have, or still has, in his workshop, called duct seal, that the phone companies used to use for sealing the ends of cable ducts and things like that. He used it for all sorts of things. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to get it worked out in really good, and then I want to make a snake, basically, that will be long enough to go all the way around. Okay, that's going to be about half, but it's still fairly thick, so. And by also, like I had mentioned, by rolling it in my hands, I'm getting some heat into it. Start and work it all the way around, right on the flange. Okay, I'm just a bit short, so what I can do is I'm just going to work some along this way, because I have a little bit more here than I actually need, so I'm just going to work it along, and it will eventually close up that gap. You want it all the way around. You know it's going to squeeze out when you attach this and tighten it down. So, okay, next is to put this on the roof. So here we go. And I'm kind of stupid anal that I have to make sure the screws line up one way or the other. So some things just never change with me. Okay, now I've got it set firm. And I have one of my cordless Makitas. These are the screws I'm going to use. They're a self-tapping screw. And it has a 5/16 head on it. So put them all in place. And I won't tighten any of them up until they're all started. Same as when I did put the headlight back in. That's a habit I've gotten in when I'm putting anything together. Even though I'm cutting new holes, it's still the way I'll do things. Okay. I'm going to do it in a star pattern. Okay. Next will be just to snug them up until the stuff squirts out a little bit. I'm not doing a star pattern, I'm just kind of doing it in a way that it's going to walk it around. So this is, I can see slight distortion happening here. So I know that the screw is going tight, but it doesn't have to absolutely bottom out. So, and you could leave it like that, but what I like to do, and I'll wet my finger, I like to smooth the stuff that came out. It's not necessary, but it's something I do. Nobody's going to see it except anyone that climbs on the roof of this thing. So it's not for aesthetics, but to me it's just like, kind of like just, you know, closing or finishing the job instead of leaving it just not quite done. Kind of stupid, but that's kind of the way I do things. Okay, now I'm going to show you why I do things the way I do things. Previous owner, that's how they would have done it. spraying this stuff on. Smear it all over the place. Yeah, it kind of seals and then eventually it leaks. Well, eventually mine might need to be resealed, but it's just done that much neater. Just looks a little bit neater. And I know that it's going to be well sealed. And with this kind of putty, it doesn't cure, it doesn't harden. So if this ever does start to leak, I can always come and just put a little bit of a turn on these screws and snug it down a little bit more as a temporary fix. And I don't use silicone when I do this. Many people do, but it's best to use the putty on an aluminum roof like this. Although this has little bits of plastic in it, it's not going to affect how it seals. The plastic is just on the outside. Now I'm just making sure it worked down into the gap around the pipe. So, well, I'll turn you off. No use you watching me doing this again, so you can catch up with me in a few minutes. So there we go, guys. Vent number 2. Vent number 1. Vent number 2. Literally number 2 because it's the one from the bathroom. Now you notice I could have put the screws opposite here, but because of the railing and getting the screwdriver, I moved them so I could make sure that I could get at them with the drill. Otherwise I would have had a problem. So I got those both on. I got more sealant left over, which is good. I will keep it, and 2 screws left over. What happened there? Okay. Did I forget some? No. Gotten in the habit, especially when you're working up on roofs and stuff, is taking extras with me. Because all you need is to have one strip, or you drop one or something, and you got to climb down and get it. We used to replace vents, like the vents, like the ones that are in here. I don't know if you can see through there or not. They're just a regular roof vent. Our cable splicer trucks, when I worked at the garage doing fleet repairs, had vents on them to get, to help the air go through the truck, and we would have to replace those fairly regular. They would get damaged from snow load, or the guys that leave them cranked up too high and drive, and then the tops would get damaged, and we'd replace them on a semi-regular basis, I guess. You could always count on doing likely one or two a month. And we used pop rivets and silicone because I couldn't convince the company to use the duct seal. But with them coming off on a regular basis, silicone is likely just as quick, just as easy. Cleans up easy anyway, because you give it a quick buzz with your with the Scotch-Brites on the Scotch lock there, and a little bit of brake cleaner with a rag and clean it up, and then silicone right over, put the new vent in, and we would just pop rivet them in. And I always made sure that I had a handful of pop rivets when I went up on the roof of the truck. As sure as hell you'd get up there, and if you'd just had grabbed as many as you thought you needed, you'd be one short, or you'd find one that was mixed in that was the wrong size or something. It's not something you need to do. It's something I got in the habit of doing. It's a good habit to get in, always having a couple of extra fasteners, especially when you're working in a place where there's a bit of an accessibility issue. In this case, I'd have to climb down the ladder, walk 100 feet back to the garage, walk 100 feet back, come up the ladder. Which would be bad enough for most, but when you have balance and leg strength issues like I do, the less times I go up and down the ladder, the better. I used to be able to scurry up and down ladders like a squirrel does on trees, but now the transition, especially from the ladder onto the roof here, this ladder is, the RV ladder is 10 inches wide, so it's narrower than a regular ladder would be. So the transition to the roof was a little bit awkward when your legs are flopping around like the arms on an octopus. So next is going to be taking all this crap off and resealing it when I have some time. But I think that's for another day. They just kept caking it on and caking it on. I'm going to try a different tool I have to take that stuff off. So, from atop Grandma and Grandpa's playhouse, it's the Iceman signing off. Take it easy. Have a good one.